Hi, guys. Welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another fantastic day for an interview. I know I say that every time, but I'm so excited because this particular guest, I have been hunting high and low for months, and the universe just didn't want to play. We had from time changes in the sense of summertime, wintertime. Suddenly we were an hour out expecting each other, and it was chaos. And now, I mean, for crying out loud, right now, when we are actually recording that, my guest is beaming in from the UK, where right now it is hot as hell. We are recording that in a record-breaking summer. So fire is right now absolutely there. And maybe it was meant to be that we had to wait for our interview, because my guest, Pam Warren, is also known as the Lady in the Mask, a woman whose destiny was literally forged in fire. Fire and chaos turned her life around. And she is now here to make this world a better place. And she has been doing so for close to a quarter of a century now. She is a real kick-ass woman. She was Woman of the Year at one stage. There are accolades. We could speak now half an hour about the accolades. You look into the show notes down there. You will see them there. I'm so excited, Pam Warren, that you are on my show. Welcome.
Thanks, Stefan. And it's lovely to be here. I'm really glad we made it in the end.
So, there are very few stories like you. Trauma comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. I mean, trauma can be like someone speaks to you in an early stage of your childhood, and that can be incredibly upsetting and can leave deep, deep mental scars. In other cases, there can be bigger things. But I think you are pretty there with sort of the crown. So, I mean, when other people were worrying about Y2K, 1999, were worrying about, God, the winter is coming, it's October, boring, and will the world stop? And when the clock goes to midnight, you had other problems. Tell us a bit what happened to you.
Yes, that's right. I was on a commute from my home into London to go on a training course, and my train, which was a high-speed train, hit a train coming out of Paddington at over 130 miles an hour. The carriage I was in was directly behind the engine, and the fuel tanks caught fire and swept through our carriage. I was lucky enough to survive, but I was very badly burnt. I lost my entire face. I've lost all the skin on my hands, the scars on my legs, etc. And unfortunately, 31 people did die during that incident. Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago, but it still evokes emotions when I think back to it. And however, I was lucky enough to survive. Many didn't.
Look, it is where you were talking about the 31 people. I thought I read a higher number, but you're talking at least 500 people who were injured and whose life forever changed. And
right.
It is crazy to imagine something like that. You imagine that in a third world, maybe somewhere, but not in London. Okay, not Paddington, not in the so-called first world. I mean, this was weird. Did you ever think about disasters? What was your life like before? You were saying you were going on a training course. What were you doing? What were you up to?
Back then, I was a financial advisor. I had my own company, and it was doing very well, thank you very much. So really, the way I've always looked at it is I was on that train minding my own business, and this incident happened. I never call it an accident, and I'll explain why later. There had been train crashes before. This is the awful thing. And yes, I used to catch the train, and it would flash into my head as I was boarding the previous train crashes, but I would assume they'd done something about it. they'd improve things, they'd change things. Turns out they didn't. They actually put profit before human lives, because they worked out it was cheaper to pay compensation after something, whether you died or were severely injured, than it was to put right what was wrong on our railway system at the time, which I found totally unacceptable. And even when I was in hospital, when all this was beginning to come to light, I thought to myself, well, I don't want anyone else going through what I've just been through. Luckily, there were 81 of the survivors agreed with me. So we banded together. We set up the Paddington Survivors Group. I was the chairwoman. By then, I was out of hospital, but still undergoing operations. They lasted for 2 years. And I had to wear a plastic mask where I've been grafted from my top lip upwards. The plastic mask was a very hard Perspex mask, and it was there to stop the scarring developing on my face, which thankfully, touch wood, it did do its job. I've always thanked the mask for the face I've got now. But it was while I was wearing this mask, we were savvy enough to realise the media like a picture, and a woman in a mask taking on the government, the rail industry, and saying, why, what has happened? Why have you put profit before our lives? That obviously made for a good story. So they supported us. But it took us 5 years of hard campaigning, meeting up with all the heads of the industry, even going as far as Parliament and meeting up with ministers, etc., trying to get them on board to commit to change. That it took 5 long years, which obviously had a bit of an effect on my own personal recovery.
Which is interesting that you say that, because I mean, here you were, in order to be a financial advisor and doing well, you have to be kind of a very focused and driven woman. That would have been your time planner, and that would have been your very structured life, busy as. Yeah. And then suddenly someone presses the pause button. And in your case...
Well, I actually... Sorry.
No,
sorry,
in your case,
I actually call it ripped it up.
Yeah.
I had nothing left. My company disappeared because I was too... It would take me eventually 10 years to recover.
Wow.
That wasn't just the physical side. The physical side really, I came to terms with after 2 years. And even though it wasn't perfect, and I'm still suffer with some of the physical injuries, even though it wasn't perfect, I'd had enough of the operations. So I was the one that turned around and said, you know what, this is good enough. It was the mental side that was hardest. And that really took me, as I said, 10 years in total to overcome. And in a way, because I was driven and wanted to change the rail industry for the better, that because my energy was going into that, it wasn't going into my looking self-care, my looking after myself. So therefore, I think my mental recovery took longer because of the campaigning and the, trying to make change. So would I have recovered quicker, better without all that going on? I don't know. I can't change things from the past, and I'm still quite proud of what I managed to achieve. So if it's a trade-off, I'm happy to accept the trade-off.
Oh my God. There's so many things that insight alone is worth your weight in gold. We often not get sidetracked, but we take on resentment, anger, frustration. There is all this grief process going that often is very staggered and goes back and forth. And anger and denial, resentment is all part and parcel of that. Of course, when you have got a very justified cause, like in your case, revolutionizing essentially the safety of the rail network in the UK, bloody hell, that is, I can see where that can preoccupy you so much that you probably don't even realize what is going on. Start off with that. But we also
No,
have
I
to
mean,
say that in the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s now, I don't think that the care of survivors, of victims was as well established. I don't think that PTSD and the crisis services, I mean, was there actually help there for you? Or was that all a bit wishy-washy, ad hoc? Here's a number you can call if you want to.
No, actually, that's one of the interesting things. The physical injuries, yes, they looked after because they couldn't do anything else. However, the mental side, because when I got taken to hospital straight after the crash, because I was so badly burnt, I was put into a coma. So I was in a coma for 3 weeks. By the time I woke up, and then they described to me the physical injuries, the operations I'd have to go through, the fact I'll be in hospital for over 3 months. By the time I came out of hospital, all the help had gone. Because it had been, the incident had happened, people had forgotten about it already, which was another thing to contend with. It was almost like, yes, I survived, but actually I got forgotten somewhere along the line. So I never actually got any help from the state or any sort of community infrastructure. I was not to know the consequences of what I'd just been through. It was only after about 2 years, which was when I had the alcoholic stage and eventually tried to commit suicide, that's when I suddenly realized, or my family helped me realize, to be honest, that I had a problem. And from there, we then got myself the professional help that I needed. And thank God we did, because I don't think I'd still be around had we not. And yes, you're right. PTSD was known about back at that time, but I think people just thought it went away after a little while. Or they associated it only with army veterans. You know, nobody else suffered from it. But you can get PTSD from all sorts of things. And if somebody has a trauma in their life, and I like to talk about big things like train crashes or war or anything like that, but it can be something very, very insignificant, or it could be something that's fairly normal, like divorce or losing your job or things like that. You can get PTSD off the back of. And it takes astute professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists. They shouldn't be a taboo. They really do know when to diagnose somebody with either minor depression, which can be treated, or they've got full-blown PTSD. And because mine took so long for anyone on the health side to pick up on, I've now got it chronically, which means I cannot get rid of it. I have just had to learn how to deal with it and interweave it into my normal life. So it's also become part of me. I am partly PTSD.
So true. Same here, same on my side. And I mean, in all fairness, there are, if you look at the figures of PTSD and let's say motor vehicle accidents, after a major motor vehicle accident, it's about 1 in 3 will develop a form of PTSD. Now, sometimes, things can get better over time, but often enough it doesn't. And often enough it can get very chronic. And I mean, by definition, we're talking 3, 6, 12 months down the line that symptoms don't get better. Because immediately after a trauma, it is very normal that your brain goes again over and over and over through it. And your adrenergic nervous system is ready. Man, where's the next threat? That's normal.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the first few days, you need that. But then later down the line, when it becomes entrenched, this behavior, the hypervigilance, the constant, my God. And that's, of course, a problem. Because in my particular case, it was a gang assault. I ended up being pretty smashed up, and I immediately started learning martial arts. So for the next 4 or 5 years, I was focusing on my direction, on my fight, so to speak. And then 4 or 5, I mean, this was a very dark time for me. It was the dark time for you. And then suddenly you realize you have a drink and suddenly it goes, the pain goes away. Was that the experience with you? What did the alcohol give you when you were going into that harder time, into that prolonged, things will not get quickly better time?
Yeah, well, before it was the PTSD was diagnosed, I didn't understand, as I said, what was going on. I just knew things weren't right with me, but also I was pushing everyone else away, my family, my husband at the time, because it was very easy to sit there and say, well, nobody understands what I'm going through, because within my little unit, nobody did understand. They were from the outside looking in. Plus, I was in a lot of pain, obviously, with the injuries, etc. So the first drink I had, I think it was mainly because I picked it up because I was unhappy. So I just thought, oh, I'll have a drink. But that very quickly turned into, oh, actually, I feel a bit better. I'll have another one. And then I call it the numbing effect. It actually numbed me. And for a little while, I thought it was helping me sleep, because I'd drink a few and then I'd drop off to sleep. Yeah. Whereas if I didn't have a drink, I was plagued by nightmares. Therefore, I had insomnia. Therefore, I felt lousy the next day. But it wasn't very long before, well, you know, because you've been on the journey, but I would wake up in the morning and need a drink in order to face the day. And then I would have a hangover, so I'd have hair of the dog, and that would start me off again. It was just horrendous. And I thought I was getting away with it. I thought, oh, I'm a functioning alcoholic person.
Yeah, right.
What I didn't realize, of course, was, again, the people around me could see what was happening. But every time they tried to intervene, I was aggressive. I was horrible. Not physically aggressive. I was verbally aggressive, and would do everything I could to hide my drinking, avoid situations where they might catch me when I was completely, sozzled, that sort of thing. And unfortunately, my husband at the time was not that caring, so he didn't do anything. And it, as I said, it just spiraled. But underneath it all, underlying it all, I was still very, very unhappy, but couldn't put my finger. This is why I always say the professional help is so important, because I could not put my finger on why I was unhappy. I should be happy. I survived a horrendous incident. I have got my life. I've got a future. So really, I should be grateful. And people were telling me how grateful I should be, which was making me even more unhappy. So I was drinking even more.
Were you happy before the accident or the incident, you want to call it? Truly happy?
Yes, but then I felt more in control of my life.
Well, that's a different thing. That's not happiness. In control, that's a type A personality who runs everything around her.
Oh, God, I was a complete control freak. When I was a financial advisor, yes, I was driven, and yes, I had my own company and doing very well. But it's only now, in hindsight, I call it the conditioning. We come out of that womb and we are just conditioned from day one as to how we should behave, which I sort of get, because otherwise society doesn't function. And the reason human beings are so successful is because we are collaborative. Therefore, we need a community. Excuse me. I've got scarring in my throat, so
please, we all need to hydrate. So, guys, if you're listening to this, grab a glass of water. Hydrate.
That was the public health warning. So that's what I've always put it down to. So I was conditioned to grow up, get an education. I did work for other people, but then decided I wanted to be self-employed, get married. I never wanted children, but get married, go through all this process, have the next bigger house. So move from a flat to a 2-bed to a 4-bed that's how we're all brought up. And that's why I thought I was happy back then. But I've always said, and I describe it in my book, as the train crash was happening, I believed I was going to die. I honestly thought that's it, particularly when I saw the fireball coming down that carriage at me. And in that split second, my brain went, it has not been worth it. And what it meant by that was my life up until that point had not been worth it, because I was working so hard. I was not seeing my family. I would not go out. I would socialize with other financial advisor type people. But I just wasn't living a quality of life. So when I woke up from the coma in hospital, because my vocal cords had been burnt, I couldn't speak for, it was getting on for 3 months, I think. So you have a lot of time to think when you can't talk. So I was lying in the hospital bed, and I made a promise to myself that I would never, ever have that thought again before I die. So that's what's driven me now. I mean, I still got the similar traits of, if I see something wrong, I want to put it right, or I will get on with putting it right. But at the same time, it's tempered now with the, when I have to die the next time, I want to be able to look back on this half of my life and go, boy, that was fun.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I mean, that is now 22 years after the Paddington train crash. And you must admit that was only the start of your trials and tribulations, because there was all, you were already saying the 2 years of your immediate recovery through surgeries, etc., through the darker times of the depression, of the suicidal ideation, of numbing your life. Then the fight, I mean, it took you 5 years to get or make the impact that you ultimately did in causing a royal inquiry, contributing the pressure to the government, to actually causing changes to happen in a situation where essentially privatization prior to that had led to a very different culture, to a very different, so many shortcuts. When I looked in preparation for that, when I looked into the things that were wrong in the system, it was actually quite shocking. You think, nah, that can't be. This is sort of the most basic things, certain safety systems that would maybe cause a train to slow down once it had gone through a warning light, a red light. Oh, no, too expensive, you don't do that. Or certain safety systems to say, okay, hang on, two trains are heading towards each other. Nah, let's not have that. Nah. You just think, come on. But it's only with hindsight, and it's only because of the work of people like you who have not given up. On the contrary, who found a new purpose of life, a new destiny. And that was beautiful. What made that change happen from, I do no longer want to live. I want to numb myself and even start drinking before the sun even goes up, to, okay, let's take on the world. What made that change happen?
It was, well, I mean, like a tanker, it took a little while to turn around. But I think it started because I was progressively getting worse with the drink, falling over, drunk, insisting people paid me attention. When we were on the campaign trail, stumbling over words that I thought I was absolutely fine. I was coming across as just jovial and fine, and I wasn't at all. I was coming over as a drunk. Yeah. So people began to comment to me. People that cared about me were beginning to comment to me. But I think the real turning point, now, this is where I'm lucky. I became friends with a guy over in this country called Simon Weston. Oh, and he had been severely burnt in the Falklands. Yeah, amazing guy. He and I became firm friends. We're very, very good friends. But in those early stages, I hadn't met him up until that point, and I reached out to him and I said, can I come and meet you? We were both working for a charity on scarring. And he said, yeah, come to my home. So I went to his home and we spent a day together, and he was amazing because he was the first person I actually turned around and went, I think I've got a problem. And he said, don't tell me you don't want a cup of tea, you want a glass of wine. And I went, yeah.
Priceless.
And then you got to remember, he's a very, very jovial Welshman, and he tells you exactly the way it is. But he said to me, Pam, I've been there, I've done that, I've got the T-shirt. And he then explained all the times, because as he said, it wasn't just once. He came out of that and then fell into it again and all this sort of stuff. But the phrase that he used towards the end, which I will always remember, was, Pam, you can either let the alcohol take control of your life and you will eventually lose everything, or you can take back control and get rid of the alcohol. And that's exactly, I actually went home from that trip and I threw every single bit of alcohol out the house. Now, I didn't touch alcohol after that for 2 years at all. Once I made my mind up to do something, I do it. Now I have gone back, I will admit, I now drink, but only socially. And I always have a tall glass of water with the alcoholic drink. And I have to drink that glass of water before I can have another one. And the maximum I will allow myself is 4 in one sitting. Mm. And it's just the way that I have control, because I know I have a weakness. I had those episodes that I'm not proud of. But I don't want to deny myself completely. So that's the way I personally have dealt with it and find it quite comfortable. Oh, and I don't drink during the week at all. It's only at the weekend socially.
The problem, of course, is for us alcoholics who are maybe genetically predisposed a bit more and have a bit more explored that side of our life. Yeah, we have all tried that. Okay, we tried no beer, but only hard liquors. We tried no hard liquors, only beer. Yeah. You're right. I must say, for me, I'm really pleased. I'm really happy for you that you have got that control. For me, that control goes out of the window after the first 2-3 glasses. So therefore, no, there's nothing to stop.
I do have a relative who is a full-blown alcoholic and has been, but she joined AA about 10 years ago. Mm. So I sort of lived with her through her journey, and I admire her greatly. But I do think AA is such an excellent support system and a system to try and tackle it. And yes, she's doing really, really well. But as she said, it's like smokers, isn't it? Even when you quit, you're never truly an ex-smoker. So even when you quit the alcohol, you're never truly an ex-alcoholic. So I do sympathise. I really do. And I suppose for me, I'm because I'm fearful of going down that route, I'm able to hold myself away from it but I'm always aware that it is there.
But Pam, alcohol is only one way to escape your reality. You had many other opportunities. You could say going onto the campaign trail was maybe just as powerful a toxin to distract you from what was going on. The kind of workaholic. I mean, again, a beautiful way of not having to deal with what is going on. But then again, you had pain. What was your relationship with painkillers? Were they are often
God.
How did that go?
No, actually, I don't know why I never became addicted to it. Thankfully.
Yeah.
They did it because I was on morphine for 2.5 years.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And they had to wean me off gradually.
Absolutely.
But it was always under medical supervision. I never really wanted to push it, or I was quite happy with the pain relief. As long as I was out of pain, that's as far as I ever wanted to. So maybe I haven't got that gene that crazy. Nice. And yes, I still am on painkillers. I have been ever since, and will be for the rest of my life. But again, I seem to be able to use them on the basis I only take them in extremis.
Beautiful.
So if there's other ways I can deal with my pain, I do that instead.
Sure. I think so for many people who end up in trouble with the painkillers realize that the painkillers are very effective for the physical pain, but it also helps them with the emotional pain. It numbs the emotional pain. They get the same kind of thing, the same kind of relief, so to speak, from the emotional pain. And that is therefore so hard to...
I don't know whether this is the same in your country as well, but I'm an advocate for saying general practitioners should not be allowed to prescribe either antidepressants or painkillers. To me, you need a specialist to treat people before they are then given or have access to these, because they need really, it should be given under supervision. I'm still 22 years on from the train crash. I still have a psychologist. I still talk to my psychologist. And when I'm going through a rough patch, because life's like that, he's the first person I will text and then say, can I have a session? That, if you like, is a healthy reaction. But my GP never suggested that. They just want to chuck pills at you.
Sure. Again, that is a very different culture and a very different, and when I say culture with that, I'm not referring to the UK, but maybe a medical system that is not as holistic and is maybe so overwhelmed with all kind of crap that they just say, yeah, come on, here's another pill. I think we. Yeah,
I'm not blaming the GPs at all. You know, that every GP in any country has got a very difficult job because they have to see so many people, and they do have drugs companies pushing themselves on them and saying, look, this is the next marvelous drug. But yeah, there's just, particularly with people's mental health, I worry a lot.
So true. So true. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it is such a huge undercurrent of mental health problems in our societies. If you think about the prevalence, so how often does depression, what's the chance of depression happening in your lifetime? It's about 1 in 5, 1 in 4. And if you're in chronic...
I think we should relook at those stats, because when you think about it, we've come through COVID.
Yeah.
In my opinion, every single human being on this planet alive at the moment has got PTSD.
Touche, yeah. Touche. There are clearly diagnostic criteria for PTSD and for depression. So sort of tick boxes that you have to tick. But you're quite right. Our life has changed. But then again, whole generations before us have gone through world wars, through other major scenarios, and the trauma was there. Horrific trauma was there. So I think let's accept the fact that trauma is part of our life. And there are sometimes days when not 6 hours go by until something else happens. And I just look around and look up in the sky and think, what's going on? What are you trying to do? Are you really testing me this much? I don't know if there's someone up there, but whoever is up there is taking the mick. Come on. So that is normal. And I think that is what we need to recognize. We are being challenged constantly. And the skill of survival is adaptation, is change, is growth, is developing habits that allow you to become more resilient, because shit will happen. And it's not if, but when. Okay. So,
but everyone talks about resilience as if resilience is one thing. It's not. To me, resilience is multifaceted. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing I ever learned through all my experiences, the one you can instantly do is you teach yourself that anything that happens, you accept the situation.
Mm.
You don't worry about, oh, it shouldn't have happened to me, or blah, 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 or get angry or what. You just accept the situation because you can't change it. If you can change it, that's different. But if you can't change it, you go, right, I'll accept it. I'm ready to move on. And that's when all the facets for resilience start popping in, because that's when you can then start working out, okay, I need this bit in order to be more resilient. And then I need that bit, and I need to plan a strategy, or, you know, whatever it might be. I mean, I've always said my resilience is actually made up of 15. And if you think about card, I wish I had some card around, but if you had one piece of card, like a birthday card, you can easily bend, tear, or fold it. But you know, the more layers of that card you can put together, it becomes harder to tear or bend or, you know, rip apart. And that, to me, is how you should build your own personal resilience. You keep layering it up, and then you pick the bits that will actually work because you've accepted whatever is happening very quickly.
Beautifully said. I would go one step further by also accepting what has happened to you in the past. And that is just as much building up the resilience. You were saying that you're suffering from PTSD. Now, that is actually quite handy in some circumstances. It made me a very good doctor in trauma settings. It's hard to catch me out because there is this hypervigilance. There is this kind of being switched on that can be of very great benefit. So if there is a disaster, then you actually want to have that fight and flight going. You want to have that aspect of you being there. So I actually find it intriguing to think about the PTSD as something positive, as reframing it to a survival mechanism that is there potentially to help me in future, not necessarily always to be such a negative thing.
Sorry.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
No, I was going to say that I've often said, I mean, when I came through the train crash, I always refer to myself now as pre-Pam and post-Pam, using the train crash as a watershed. The pre-Pam, I look back on the person I was, and I don't like them. And had the train crash not happened, I would just be an older version of that person. Whereas the post-crash Pam, because of, as you quite rightly say, your PTSD and having to change and adapt to all your different changed circumstances, I much prefer the person I am now. I'm softer, I'm friendlier, I put my friends and family first. You know, I'm still a bit of a workaholic once I get involved, but that's partly because I get excited all the time. I want to be kind to people. But the main thing, and my raison d'etre for what I do now, is very much I want people to be happy. It's never going to happen. I appreciate that, but I'm going to do my damnedest or my little bit to try and help them reach whatever their state of happiness is, because we're not on this planet for that long. And I know we're getting into things that people reel off, life is short and all this sort of stuff. But believe me, having faced death, I can tell you learn how precious it is. This is my second chance, which is leading to my point I've always said, and I say it in my book as well at the end, I will not negate the pain and suffering that I have been through and my fellow survivors went through. However, the train crash is the best thing to have happened to me.
Absolutely. It's only when you're in the darkness that you can see the light and really appreciate the light for what it is. If you have never, how shall I say that? You take your feet for granted until you hurt yourself and you can't walk and you hobble around. You take your eyesight for granted. We take everything for bloody granted until someone takes something away from you. And then suddenly you realize really how wrong you were, or how superficial your thoughts were. And I could not agree more with you That's exactly how I feel. And it's virtually the same with every single guest I've got on my show. Most of my guests have gone through hell and back and just kept going and became new, better versions of themselves. And often enough, it comes up either in a discussion or I ask them directly, if you had a time machine, would you go back and what would you change? And I cannot recall a single person who actually said, no, I would change everything. No, most people said, no, actually, no, I wouldn't change a thing because otherwise I wouldn't be the person.
I'll change one thing, which is I would be married to Brad Pitt.
I don't know. I never had a beer with Brad, so I cannot actually comment on him. It is. I think there is this fantasy there. Okay, I'll give you that, Pam.
Look, if you've got a time machine, why can't you get your fantasies?
Okay, I give you that one. Brad, if you're out there, okay, if you're listening to that, I know where Pam lives. Oh no, this is just, and it's that kind of humor. We can nowadays actually take the mick out of ourselves. I remember certainly, I actually like that pre and post Pam. I like that. It's certainly the younger version of myself. God, was I a dick? Oh, I was so myself, honestly. Oh God.
Aren't we all though? I mean, I think we all look back on our 20s and we just cringe, don't we?
True, very true.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I look back on some of the pictures of me in my 20s. The fashion. Look, we've got to say, the 1970s had no idea about fashion. Absolutely none.
Hey, shoulder pads in the 80s. Yeah. And big loopy earrings for you girls. Oh, I love that.
No, I was always a new romantic back in the 80s. Thank you very much.
Oh, no. I had at one stage in the 70s, I had a perm. I mean, a big perm.
Really? Oh, you've got to send me a picture of that.
Honestly, it's bitter with hindsight. Oh, God. But that was when we were younger.
Do you find in the modern age, because I noticed, like, that I've noticed young lads now are getting perms again.
Oh, God.
And I'm thinking, it didn't look good back in the 70s. It's not going to look good now, is
it? But then again, which young person listens to their elders? Huh? Which young person? They all need to make their mistakes. I mean, bloody hell. I mean, nowadays we are lucky because, I mean, when the wild side of me had an earring, one earring. Nowadays you've got piercing, branding, and whatever, tattoos on your face. So maybe we got away out lightly with it.
Simpler age, yeah.
Oh, God. But I mean, here you are, and it is, you are constantly changing. And we in the preamble, guys, before we started this interview, Pam and I had a bit of a chat because I tried to figure out, well, wow, here's this woman driven, has changed the UK literally. The whole country has changed because of Pam and her, a part of her drive. And I thought, well, okay, that takes you a little bit in your life, but what's happening now? Where are you going? What you doing? And I think that is the amazing part with you, because you keep changing, you keep transforming. There are new challenges coming along. But how do you deal with challenges? I mean, I see you as this kind of superwoman charging ahead. What happens when the darkness comes? How do you behave on those days when the rain cloud seems to be over you?
I have made room for it. This is what I was saying about you build it into the fabric of yourself. So yes, I mean, 90% of the time I'm fine and I'm charging along. And as my psychologist keeps nagging me about, I'm charging along far too fast because of course I do have physical injuries, but then this is where you start balancing off life is too short, I need to get on with it type of thing. And I do get burnout. So I can keep going. And then it happens about twice a year. My body will just go, bang, that's enough. And that's when I feel a huge depression episode coming on. And I'm sure everyone can identify with this, that sometimes you wake up and your eyebrows feel really dark and heavy, and just, you can hardly, there are days when I can't get out of bed. I can't eat, I can't drink water, I just nothing. And I used to fight it. And they do say actually in the DSM-5 that if you are of, a strong driven person, actually depression, because you fight it, you can make it worse. So I've now, when I feel that stage coming on, I stop. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, I will stop. And I will give my body the time and my brain to recoup. And I slob out. I don't do my hair, I don't do my face, I don't wash sometimes. I'm lying around in my pajamas, feeling awful, watching daytime TV, feeling even worse when I watch daytime TV. I don't touch the alcohol whatsoever during those periods because I know it would be too easy to slide. And I just wait until it, and then at some point, usually 5 to 7 days later, I'll then just suddenly feel a bit lighter and think my eyebrows are lifted up again. And that's when I know I can slowly start getting back to things. So I just drop off the face of the earth. And I send a text to everyone that might worry about me to say, I'm having a fug. That's what I call it.
Excellent.
Leave me alone.
Excellent. Excellent. I just had one of them a few days ago where I just actually needed to take 2-3 days out. And I was just, nope, my body told me where to go. And it was just not my body, actually my soul told me where to go. I was losing empathy. I was just, everything was aligning, and nope, I gave in. And so I, like you, I gave myself permission. And nowadays I refuse to be ashamed about it. I refuse to be guilty, because I've learned that these evil twins of shame and guilt, they're not helping you whatsoever. On the contrary, it's normal to feel like that. We are living in societies where the praise is towards this go-getting, saccharine smile, give me a Coke and I'm gonna be sexy. And it's that kind of bullshit. No one is saying, hey, find your serene level where you function really well. No, it needs to be up there. I need to be happy. I need to be happy all the time. Guess what? No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, unless you're on drugs. And then it doesn't work on that. Okay.
Well, so I've when people have asked me now, am I happy? Generally the answer is yes, but I actually call it content. I've reached a point where I've managed to get my career going again, but also rearrange my home life, and I call it contentment. And somebody turned around to me and said, "Oh, content, that's not a very nice word. It means you've settled." And I said, "Not at all. I just feel calm and peaceful, and I like life like that." And life actually becomes a lot less complicated when you are in that content stage. And I'll take that above trauma and harassment. And that's also part of the reason why I moved recently from the southeast of England, which is really fast paced, and it's still all round about finances, and most of it's London centric. And I'm now living at the top of North Wales. And that is it's done intentionally because I want to slow pace down, and I want to have time to go off and walk up a mountain if I've got time, and go and sit by the sea, and just remember that life can be simple. It's a choice thing.
You are saying it. I was about to rephrase what you just said, but you did it more or less yourself. It is a choice. You are now making room for that. You're actually cultivating a state in which your body can exist in peace with itself, where no adrenaline and cortisol needs to rush through your veins. And if the levels drop, you top up with some coffee and keep going. That's all quite good, and that's all quite fun. But you can't keep existing like that. No, you need to actually have some time out. And it's something that I'm only learning now in my 50s, honestly. Yeah. It is, in the past, I was go-getter, just go, crash, boom, 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 bust. And that was just, like you, about twice a year, major burnouts. Exactly. That's pretty much my cycle as well. Nowadays, much better. But I mean, less immense ups and downs, but still life has its way. There are ups, there are downs, but just nowadays I'm living with them in a much nicer way and accept them for what they are. So no, that's beautiful.
The only thing I have to contend with, I can see in the future, is, because that is something I'm addicted to, it's the adrenaline of change. Because I've got used to change and being able to navigate it, if you like. If my life gets too boring, I tend to chuck a little grenade into it just to see what will happen.
Don't you worry.
It's more out of curiosity than anything else.
You're nuts, woman. You're nuts. But I understand you. I've got the same nutter living in me. So you're absolutely right. But having said that, you don't actually need to be too inventive. What is that a word? You don't need to invent too many things to make life interesting, because after all, there are so many things that are wrong in our society. And I believe you're a woman who has tasted the power of taking on an institution or a system that is set in a certain way. And if you see something wrong, I think you will speak out. And you have proven it already.
If there was an injustice, I can't bear injustice. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. And if it crosses my path, then I would say something, and I don't care who, what, or what institution it is. However, with everything that's going on around the world with establishments at the moment, I have to say 9 times out of 10, I ignore it, only because I'm aware of it. But I personally, and again, this came through COVID, or during that lockdown period, I hoped that when it finished, or when we all came out of it, I don't think it will ever finish completely, people will be kinder to each other. There'd be more humanity about everything, and we would be more tolerant and all this. And then the people that are supposed to be governing us go back to doing exactly what they were doing before, and it's also pointless. I don't care who went to a party during COVID. It's just, I'm sort of starting thinking there are far more important things happening around the world. We do not need to be distracted by internal politics or Trump trying to do some weird stuff on social media. I don't care what it is. So almost I've now got to the stage where they're up here somewhere, and yes, there's a noise and I can hear them and I pay attention every now and then, but otherwise I just generally ignore them. If I could write into my inland revenue over here and say, I don't want to be part of your club, I don't want to be part of your club anymore, I would.
Interesting. No, you're...
Sorry, I've just realised I've done the Up the Revolution, haven't I?
No, it is just beautiful, because here is a woman who has gone through hell and back, literally, including the fireball. Come on. And then really changed a nation and made it a better nation. Not many people can say that. So therefore, to hear your journey and the lessons that you have learned and that you keep learning, to be privileged enough that you share them with me and with my audience, is just gold. Come on. So I am very grateful for these insights, because ultimately it is, why the hell do you want to learn all these lessons the hard way yourself? And you can actually talk to people like you and actually figure out, hey, what was hard for them.
Be open to listening. I mean, one of the things I really enjoy when I'm doing an event and speaking at the event is not standing up on stage and speaking. It's the mixing with the audience afterwards or beforehand.
Yeah.
Because everyone has a story and people are fascinating. Some of the stories are just brilliant. And do you know, somebody who's become a friend recently, It turned out he was a real life explorer. Who gets that these days?
Exactly. There's not too much left to explore.
Well, no, but I mean, he's a sort of lovely eccentric Englishman who, with his umbrella and bowler hat, get this, hitchhiked all the way to Japan, and then just kept on going. He ended up in Vietnam, and he now works with Mongolians and nomads in Africa, and just amazing chap. And I would not have met him had it not been for listening.
It is wisely said that you have got one mouth, two ears, and you should use them in the same ratio. So many of us don't really adhere to that too closely. Oh, wow. Okay. And that's beautiful. So no, it is, we are all have got choices to make. And I think people like you and me who have gone through darkness are far more willing to make the choices now that serve us better in the future, rather than be maybe tempted. We still are tempted, okay, but maybe 95 out of 100, I make a good choice. Tonight, I chose to have a pizza. It's a fair call. That might not be the best choice of my nutrition over the last week, but at the same token, I made the choice and I made it intentional. I said, no, tonight I'm going to treat myself. Tonight I'm going to flood my gut microbiome with some very unhealthy stuff, but it puts a smile on my face and I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Okay, so that's it. So choices, these are very active things. They don't happen to you. You make those choices. You take those actions. And that's what life is about. That's where we can make a difference, where we can choose to become a voice that needs to be heard, like in your case. There are so many things you can do in your life where you leave your destiny, where you leave a mark on this earth, where people will remember you for all the right reasons.
I don't, for me, that's not really what drives me towards the end. It's still going back to my deathbed thing. I want to be able to look back and say, that was fun, or yes, I did make a difference, but that's not, I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't need people to miss me or anything like that. Beautiful. I mean, what was that phrase about treading gently? I think it's lovely if you do make a difference, but yes, tread gently. And the choices sometimes hit you, and there isn't always a way to drive through them. But then you just have to take the time out to work out, that's the goal I want. How do I get to it? By diverting around whatever the problem is.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Pam, nowadays you're going out on the speaking circuit and you are touching the lives of so many hundreds and thousands of people there. And hopefully now with COVID settling down, you can become more active and you can become more the traveler that you're destined to be. That is fine. If people really find your story fascinating, where can they catch up with you? Tell us a bit about where can they find you?
Okay, well, obviously my website, which is simply pamwarren.co.uk, or, I mean, get in touch. They'll find me on all the old-fashioned platforms. I'm not a TikToker. I looked at that and just went, no, sorry, it ain't happening. But I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm still on Twitter, although I think Twitter's dying a death, isn't it? I'm on YouTube. And again, you just type in my name and up I'll pop. Oh. But if you want to get in touch directly, I've got my email, which is just info@pamwarren.co.uk. So I will pick it up at some point. And I do make a point where I can of getting back. It may be a few days later, because I don't know when I'll be on the road or whatever. But I do try to get back to people because I've always been brought up with that treat others how you want to be treated yourself.
Which is beautiful. And of course, before you guys get in touch, maybe learn a bit more about Pam, because she has written a book. So why not look out for it? So Pam, show us.
There you go.
From behind the mask. Indeed. The Lady of the Mask. There it is.
It's on my website. It's cheaper than Amazon on my website. And if you go to my website, I sign it for you.
It's a must. I will certainly do that. I did not get around to read your book beforehand, just because I had such a beautiful flurry of guests that come onto my show, and every one of them has written a book, and there is only so much I can read. So therefore, but yours will definitely be on my to-do list, and there's no doubt about that. So you can already warm up the pen and start signing. Okay. So no.
Well, I'm assuming all guests do this too, but as the host of the show, then you'll be getting a free copy.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, absolutely. Unfortunately, not everyone is as civilized. But having said that, future guests, just take a note. I like. No, it is just beautiful, because here is your voice. Here is the Pam and her story that is so worthwhile reading and learning from. So therefore, not everyone can hear you live, but they certainly can get your vibe and your passion, can read that in your book. So therefore, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. So no two ways around it. And if you guys, whilst you're out there, you might as well look around for that little gem, My Steps to Sobriety. There you go. And I love what you were saying about the stories and talking to people about their stories, because that's indeed two projects that I'm working on right now. One book is called Depression Lied to Me, in which I bring female storytellers together and they share their stories. So we've got 16, 17 storytellers now together. We've just stopped the recruitment for that and are in the editing phase. So that is hopefully coming out within 2 months. And it's, all about the chameleon of depression and the way it can manifest itself in different lives of different women. And so this is an amazing, amazing book. And there is the male side. The male book is equally coming out with a bit of a 2-month delay behind that. And at the moment, I wanted to call it Boys Don't Cry or Men Don't Cry, but all these titles were taken. And now we are at the moment, we are at Fuck Depression. So our title is changing constantly. So we're actually not yet 100% sure of what it will be like, but equally it will be 16 men who actually are telling their story about their depression. You were saying something.
No, I was about to suggest a title for you.
Yeah, go for it.
I can't find a title, so I'm depressed now.
Oh, bloody hell. No, that's the fate of every author in this world, okay? That's our own on a bipolar kind of system. No, guys, I had a fantastic time, Pam. I'm so grateful that you found the time and joined me here on my platform to make this world a bit of a better place, one interview at a time. And I'm very grateful, and I wish you all the energy and all the possibilities to go out there and keep going with the hard work that you're doing, with the hard work, but the great work, because you're touching lives and you're changing lives. You're opening eyes. That's a beautiful, beautiful journey. So thank you for what you're doing. And who knows, maybe the new and improved Pam in a year or two comes back onto my show as a completely reincarnated and reinvigorated, I don't know, a new Pam, because we all are changing. So who knows what will happen to you?
Who knows, indeed. And as I keep saying, I'm not done yet.
Cool. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and look down there into the description of the YouTube video or of the show. You've got all the links there to Pam Warren, and go out there and check her out. Otherwise, live with passion and look after yourself. Bye.